event, but we will be captioning this when we record it, and it will be available in the recorded version to have captions there for those who need it. So thank you for asking that question. And thank you everyone for coming and for your patience and grace. As much as we've been doing Zoom meetings, we still are not perfect every day. So thank you so much. And I want to welcome you today to our third of this year's 4-part OSPI WSAC webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about supporting students' transitions, specifically the alignment of high school and beyond plans with IEP Transition Plans, which is a new mandate from House Bill 1599 that was passed in 2019. So want to thank our guests, and we'll get to meet them here in a minute. But before we dive in, we always like to start our meetings with an acknowledgement of the fact that we are all residing on the traditional lands of the First Peoples of the area that many of us now know as Washington State. There are many peoples, families, and communities, both past and present, who represent tribal nations, and it is our role to honor with gratitude and respect the land itself upon which we now reside and the First Nations, many of whom are listed on this image you see on your screen in front of you now. Today, I am coming to you from a truly beautiful place in Washington State at the intersection of the ancestral lands of the Squaxin Island, Coast Salish, Cowlitz, and Nisqually tribes, all of whom have at one time or another been stewards of the land that I know and love as Tumwater, Washington. The land acknowledgement that our neighbors in the North Thurston School District really resonates for me. I want to share it with you. They start their meetings by saying that these tribes have lived on and cared for this land and these waterways since time immemorial. We make this acknowledgement to open a space of recognition, inclusion, and respect for our sovereign tribal partners and all Indigenous students, families, and staff in our community. I love their ancestral land acknowledgement. If you happen to know the ancestral lands upon which you are residing, I see some folks already putting that in the chat. Please feel free to add that if you know it. If you don't yet know, the links that are being provided in this slide and on the chat right now are places you can begin to learn a little bit more about Washington tribes. And it is recommended that any district or school wishing to create a statement to acknowledge their tribal lands engage in some tribal consultation and relationship building with your local tribes, just to ensure that you know you're acknowledging the correct tribes. There's no perfect way to do this. We do it with honor and respect. And the one thing we have heard from our tribal partners is it's really important just to know we're acknowledging the correct tribes. So thank you for that. And again, as much as we've been on Zoom for the last year, you'd think we'd all be old hat at this, but obviously sometimes we still need a little help. So just a reminder that now that the chat is enabled, it is there for you to use as a way to communicate with us and to share your comments and questions. We will be monitoring those. We have some designated spots in the presentation for questions, but if we see something coming up a lot, we may pause and ask for some clarification of our presenters. Otherwise, we ask that you stay muted because we're coming up over 400 folks on the call today. So want to make sure everybody gets a chance to have their voice be heard. And if you need some time away, please feel free to just use your video at your discretion. We know you've got other things going on as well. And then our last, as I mentioned, 4th installment of this year's OSPI WSAC webinar series will be taking place on March 31st, same time frame of 1 to 2:30 p.m. We're wrestling a little bit with the topic, and I would like to invite you in the space that we are providing for you today. If there is a topic that is really top of mind for you around sort of the space of career and college readiness and supporting students in that way, if you want to include that in the chat, we will be saving the chat and look for those recommendations to see if our ideas are in line with what your needs are. So again, please, if you have a top of mind issue around supporting students in this career and college readiness space, please add that to the chat as you go, and we will look at those after this event to see where we might want to take that last hour and a half with y'all as a topic. So Sarah's going to kick us off on our introductions. Miss Sarah.
Great, thank you, Kim, and welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Weiss. Weiss is nice. You can hopefully remember me that way. I'm with the Washington Student Achievement Council, which I'll introduce a little bit more about us shortly. But specifically, I work with the College Access and can we go back one slide just real quick? There we go, perfect, thanks so much. Work with college access and support programs such as college-bound scholarship and training resources around college and financial aid applications. You all know Kim Reichdahl, who is just introducing us to the webinar with OSPI. We're joined by a few other folks from OSPI, as well as colleagues from the University Place School District, who will all introduce themselves as they get to their various sections of the webinar. Note that that contact information is on this slide for all of us involved with the webinar, and Ronnie Larson is your contact for clock hours. So ready for the next slide. Thank you. In this Zoom room, we're going to launch a poll. You know who we are. You'll get a sense of who we are throughout the afternoon. But we have so many folks that we're hoping a little bit to learn about who's here, as well as how familiar are you with aligning high school and beyond plans and IEP transition plans. So you believe you need to answer both questions for the for your answer to submit. So we'll give it a little bit of time here for folks to get their answers in.
Nice. Okay. Getting close.
Kim, I'm not seeing the results of the poll. Where should that be?
Oh, okay. Can you see it, Kim?
I can. So Sarah, it looks like we've got about a third of our participants today are special education case managers and teachers. We've got about 1 out of every 5 folks as a school counselor and significant district level staff joining us today. Some other high school teachers, career specialists, career counselors, et cetera. So really nice mixed group, about 13% in others. So you all are welcome to write your titles in the chat just to give us an idea of who we've missed in the categories in our poll so we know who's here. And then as far as the familiarity, we've got 64% in the somewhat familiar category and about 25% in the new, so I'm here to learn category. So we are definitely appreciating that feedback so we can use that to help guide our conversation with you today. So thank you so much for that little bit of a straw poll. All right.
Great. And it popped up just at the end for me, so thanks for doing that, Kim. I appreciate that.
No worries.
Teamwork makes the dream work with these co-sponsored webinars. So a little bit more about the Washington Student Achievement Council, or WSAC, for those of you who might not be familiar with us. We're a state agency that's committed to advancing educational opportunities for all Washingtonians. We do this through a deep body of work ranging from research to policy to consumer protection around educational work to program administration. You may be familiar with programs such as the WA 529 college savings programs, or GET, Dream Ahead, state financial aid programs such as the Washington College Grant or College Bound Scholarship, to name a couple that we administer at the Washington Student Achievement Council. And I just want to acknowledge that I'm so grateful to be here today and to partner with OSPI on these webinar series. So I'll turn it over to Kim.
Okay, those of you that have ever joined an OSPI post-hosted webinar know that we always want to ground our work with you in our mission, vision, and values. And so you should hear some of these themes throughout the conversation today as part of the ways in which we're all working together to ensure that students are ready for those post-secondary pathways, careers and civic engagement. We're trying to do that by really focusing on closing the opportunity gaps in our system and looking at ways to develop equity-based policies and supports to empower our whole community in preparing for life after this system. But my favorite is really the values that we try to live by at OSPI. And I know many of you share these in terms of trying to be really equitable in the way we're supporting all students. We're trying to become really well known, not for accountability at OSPI, but for collaboration and service and a spirit of continuous improvement. As we all know, there's room to get better in pretty much everything we do. So we invite you to share with us where your needs are not being met so we can do so. And my personal favorite in this space, just that focus on the whole child and acknowledging the needs of every student as an individual and as part of our collective. And then our superintendent has put out new strategic goals to guide the next 4 years of OSPI's work with him at the helm. And so I was really excited. You all know my passion, if you know me, is around high school and beyond planning and using this to guide students through their experience, K-12. Even though it says high school and beyond, it's really a K-12 experience of exploration and preparation. And so the High School and Beyond Plan is now one of our agency's overarching strategic goals. And so you'll be hearing a lot more from me in the next few years, I think, as we try to improve implementation and support across the state. And then our equity statement, just acknowledging it's a lot of words, but why I like this slide and the way it's broken down is it focuses in part on some of the really predominant student groups that we see being underrepresented in our outcomes, our graduation rates, our post-secondary metrics, and knowing that we have work to do to think of ways that we can all partner better to support every student in our schools, and to do that through breaking down some of those systemic barriers that we see keeping us from helping them all reach their potential and replacing those with policies and practice that ensure all of our students have access to what they need to be successful. So in that spirit of equity, want to continue also to acknowledge that we are continuing to stand with our communities of color, and especially those who those who identify as or are categorized as Black or African American. We are wanting to continue as an agency and as individuals to lead in a space of racial and cultural equity, and we invite partnership and accountability in this work. So please make sure you're letting us know where we can get better in that spirit of continuous improvement. And I hope you will join me in acknowledging that we are all part of the solution here to these issues we are facing together as a community.
And so we as webinar facilitators thought that since today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, that we wanted to acknowledge this on today's webinar. This is especially personal to me as the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors and the daughter of someone who was born in Bergen-Belson's displaced persons camp after the war. Today was chosen as International Holocaust Remembrance Day because it is a day in 1945 when Auschwitz was liberated, where my grandfather spent some time during the Holocaust. Important to remember that the Holocaust is the dehumanization and industrialized murder of more than 6 million Jewish men, women, and children by the Nazi regime. Also a combined 11 million victims from various other groups throughout the Holocaust era. Anti-Semitism and bigotry remain prevalent today, which I've personally experienced as a Jewish person. Most importantly, Holocaust education is history, literature, social studies, psychology, art, cultural, and so much more. It is through studying the Holocaust that all people may learn the importance of critical thinking, speaking out against hatred, bigotry, and indifference, promoting equity, and acting in the pursuit of justice. On this slide, you will see that there are resources available as well as an upcoming training opportunity which will be available on PD Enroller in the coming weeks. The date is here in case you would like to mark your calendar in advance to put it on there for future reference. Next slide, please. This quote from Anne Frank, who perished in the Holocaust, is especially relevant in our work together. Words to carry with you as we begin our webinar today. And I'll quote her here: "How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world." With those inspiring words, I'll turn it back over to Kim.
Helps if I unmute. Thank you, Sarah, for that. And thank you all for your grace as we wanted to really take a moment for all these different acknowledgements. We have a lot of heavy issues that we're dealing with as a community, and as we support students, we know they are feeling some of these things as well. But what gives me hope is things like a webinar with 451 people on it that is really about more equitably supporting a student group that hasn't always received maybe the most ideal supports from us as a system, and the power that we have together to really make decisions about the way in which we support all our students, whether it be heavy issues like cultural and Holocaust remembrance and acknowledgements, or things like hope for the future, which is one of my favorite topics. So that's essentially where we're going to be focused today, really looking at those best practices and processes for aligning high school and beyond plans with IEP transition plans. And we have guests from University Place to share their journey so far in this work, give you some ideas of places to go for resources and support. And you see in this graphic, I just invite us all to do our best to remain in that learning and growth zone. This often is a topic, high school and beyond planning can often feel like another thing that we all have to do on top of everything else that we have to do. And it really is an opportunity for us to think about how we work and guide our students through their educational experience. So I want us to hopefully frame this. I love pictures. So I want to frame this for you today as an opportunity to really think differently about how we support the process as educators in all the various roles that we are here for together, and how we can help the system work better to support all students in reaching their hopes and realizing their dreams. And so when we think about high school and beyond and like, what is it? It really is a series of opportunities to help students explore who they are as a person, what they care about, what they're interested in, what they're good at. What can they do with that in terms of a potential career path that would align with their interests and skills and maybe problems that they want to solve in the world? And then how do they become that? What education or training do they actually need to take those first steps after high school onto that pathway towards their dreams that they imagine? And so that's a simplification of what this is, but it's really the three guiding questions we hope everyone keeps in mind, and they are in order. The arrows are intentional. It really is ideal that we start students off with that idea of who am I and what do I care about? Why is that important? Because we want each of them to be working towards their dreams and their hopes, not what they think they should be doing or what others think they should be doing. And then here's where we get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty. I'm not going to belabor this much. Just want to remind us all that we have had some core components of a high school and beyond plan for quite some time, but House Bill 1599 did add a few things to this framework for guidance. And one of them is the content for today, this idea that students with IEPs get the same high school and beyond plan planning with similar staff as their classmates, and that we really use the high school and beyond plan in the same way, even when those students have significant needs and have an IEP transition plan, that alignment is important. So that's going to be the focus, and I am going to stop talking and hand this over to one of our rock stars from OSPI's Special Services Department, and she's going to take you through an actual exemplar example, a case study of what this can look like for students with IEP transition plans.
Great, thank you, Kim. I'm Alexandra Toney, and I'm from the Special Education Department of OSPI. So I'm going to share a little bit about the why first, for why we need to focus on transition, and then I'm going to get into that case study so we can walk through an example together. So the first kind of point of the why, I would like to go over the some of the special education data we have. So on this slide, you can see the current 2020 students with IEPs based on their how they qualify for special education services. So you can see here that the three most common categories are highlighted in yellow. So those are communication health impairment and SLD, or specific learning disabilities. And together, those three categories equal over 65% of our students on IEPs. And a couple important things to kind of keep here are that these three categories typically have average or above average intelligence, right? And also only 3.2% of our students have an intellectual disability. So I just wanted to keep some of this framing as we go to the next slide to talk about some student outcomes. So here we have the data that we have for post-school outcomes for our students on IEPs. So 1 year after a student with an IEP exits high school, they're contacted to complete the survey. And this determines if they are engaged in any post-secondary education or employment. And this is also our state performance plan indicator B14. So I want to bring your attention to the yellow bar at the bottom here, which indicates that 27.9%, almost 28%, or more than 1/4 of our students on IEPs are not employed or involved in any post-secondary education or training 1 year after they exit our system. So this is the area that we'd want to see the smallest, and imagine if our state unemployment was nearly 28%. So this is, I think, a call to action. So I'm going to pause here and kind of, if we could go back one more moment, to have everyone kind of glance at this slide and just keep in mind that only 3.2% of our students have an intellectual disability, and also our IDEA charge, which is to prepare all students on IEPs for further education, employment, and also to be able to have a yes, to prepare them for further education and employment. So this is our call to action to support students with better transition support and to collaborate as a system to provide intensive transition supports for our students if we need to. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll walk into our case study. So let's talk about the how now for this transition work. So our first case study here is Kaleb. This is from an example that we got from the field. It was a really good example. So some names and content has been changed, but it is an example from the field. So we're going to drop the chat in so that you can follow along. But Kaleb is a 20-year-old student who has autism and some pretty intensive support needs. He's currently getting transition services at high school. And one of his goals is to be employed in an office setting. So when we go through the case study, which is dropped in there now, you're going to notice that there are page numbers on each of the slides so that we can follow along.
And I just want to point out, Alexandra, that I did color code these for you guys. So hopefully it's a little bit easier since we're having you bounce between two different documents potentially. If you want to join us and follow along, it's totally up to you. Some of the screenshots are a little hard to see. So the green page numbers are going to be referencing the Appendix B case study, and the yellow page numbers will be representing OSPI's High School and Beyond Plan template, the writable document that we have as a sample. So I just wanted, excuse me, to clarify that as we go.
Thank you, Kim. So before we dig in, I just want to connect everyone to the optional High School and Beyond Plan template that we have at OSPI. You can choose to have this template or you can create your own. The case study that we're walking through today will provide screenshots from this template. And you can see here, this is found on the first page of the template, and it has an overview of the different elements, which can be helpful for teams. So we're going to drop that link into the chat just so you guys are all aware of it as well. So the next thing I want to talk about before we dig into the case study is this IEP symbol. When we go through, you're going to notice that this is a cue for what information needs to be coordinated between the two documents, the High School and Beyond Plan and the IEP Transition Plan. We anticipate that this will also be included in the next update of the High School and Beyond Plan template, so we hope it's helpful for your teams. Perfect, so let's dig in. We're going to start with Kaleb's IEP to get an idea of his IEP services as well as his transition plan. So if you're following along, this is on page 26 and 29. So you can see here that this student is getting a variety of services across quite a few areas. So for example, adaptive, speech, also math. You can see a couple other categories here. And I wanted to highlight that he's also getting 750 minutes of adaptive support in the community setting to focus on things like being safe, self-management, shopping, and employment skills. On the IEP Transition Plan, which you can see some of those goals on the other side of the screen, you can see his 3 goals for education, employment, and also to be able to be, so those goals are that he will get on-the-job training in an office setting, that he will obtain employment in an office setting, and that he will be able to independently manage his finances. So I wanted to provide a little highlight of that. He had a really stellar IEP, and so that was just a glimpse into it. If you want to dig in further, I would definitely recommend checking out his IEP Transition Plan, which has a lot of really good information, as well as his IEP goals, which can be found on page 27. So now we're moving into the high school and beyond plan. So this is the first kind of part. It's found on page 3 if you're following along. So in this part, you can see a student's profile in 7th and 8th grade in the top, and then in high school in the bottom. And this really captures a student's interests, goals, and skills over time. You can also see a summary of the goals that Kaleb is currently working on in high school, and this is all in student first language. So to achieve goals, I am currently working on. And then I just wanted to highlight that this information was populated from his IEP goals, which was coordinated with his high school and also beyond plan, and that there are quite a few student activities that were part of this process that helped kind of populate this information. So in the next 3 slides, we're going to go through some of those student activities, but this was a very student-driven collaborative kind of process. So I hopefully you'll be able to see that. Okay, so if you're following along, these are 14 and 15 in the case study. So Kaleb completed 2 strength assessments over time, one in 2019 and one in 2020. These are adapted from the T-Folio, which is a really great free transition portfolio tool. So we're going to drop that link into chat as well. So we're going to go kind of pretty quickly through these. These 2 are specific activities around goal setting. So for example, you can see that the student utilized some aids to help his student choice and also participation. So pictures are helpful. And you can see in the first activities, he specified a few of his goals. So you can see that the student wants to be with his parents. He wants to be able to go shopping, and he wants to be able to spend time with his family. And if you remember from his IEP, one of his independent living goals was to be able to independently manage his paychecks and finances. So we see that come together here as well. Thank you, Chris, for popping in that T-Folio link. So in this last kind of student activity slide, you can see 2 more activities where the student has self-identified skills that he needs and challenges that he may face in the classroom and beyond. So these were really helpful activities to target some of his IEP goals and some of the areas that he really wanted to focus on. So we're going to drop the links to these as well, and you'll notice that one of these tools is also from the T-Folio. So I just wanted to show how this was a very collaborative process, and it was also very student-driven. Great. So moving into the next component, this slide shows what the employment and educational goals are going to be like in the IEP Transition Plan on the left and the High School and Beyond Plan on the right. You'll notice the IEP symbol here because this information needs to be coordinated. And so Kaleb has completed a career interest assessment. An office professional was his top career. You can see that indicated here. And it's indicated on both the IEP and the high school and beyond plan. Education is going to be the same, where he's going to get on-the-job training in an office setting, and this information is coordinated between those two documents. So moving on to the course planner, I just want to highlight a couple things. Kaleb has had some really awesome opportunities to take some classes that align with his interests as well as his goals and some of his needs. So for example, Kaleb is very into dancing, right? And he's had some opportunities to take some music classes as well as some dancing courses here, which is really exciting. And then he also has some courses that support some of his goals as a person. So for example, personal finance and pre-vocational training. So it's really important for school teams to kind of collaborate together here to determine the best course selection to support students' interest and also goals and also needs. You'll also see the IEP symbol here at the top. It's kind of small, but you should see it right there. And this is in there because this should align with the IEP course of study information. And I did want to highlight that Kaleb is using his personal pathway requirement to take career and transition courses in place of, for example, like Spanish or French. And this is because these better align with his plan for post-high school, which is not including a 2-year or a 4-year college. So cruising through to graduation, you can see here that Kaleb has completed the state assessment pathway by getting a passing score on the WAAIM. You see the IEP symbol here as well, because the graduation pathway should be connected to his IEP transition plan goals and the graduation information found in his IEP. So lastly, I wanted to touch base on this. This is a part of the OSPI provided template. It's completely fillable. So you can see here that Kaleb he's highlighting a few of his strengths. He's also had some great opportunities to gain some like work and community experience through his high school. So for example, he worked at his high school coffee shop. He volunteered at a store, and he also served as a courier. So these were some of the experience that he was able to gain. And he was able to update this template over time. So this is on page 10 if you're following along. So I know this was just a really quick overview, but if you go through the case study, there's I think about 30 pages of just really good information. But I wanted to highlight how it's coordinated. So if you want to learn a little bit more about this, we have a guidance document that is going to be dropped in chat here. It's actually a document suite that has quite a few chapters, including student checklists. We also have that chapter A that has case studies. So we just walked through Kaleb today. We are getting ready to post another example, which is going to be Sherry, who's going to be a 10th grader using the CTE course sequence to support her goal of becoming a graphic designer. So we hope these examples are helpful to the field. And if you have any other questions here, feel free to drop them in the chat or send me an email. I'd be happy to chat through it a little bit more.
Thank you, Alexandra. And before we go on to the next slide, I just want to point out this first link that is in the chat, the guidelines for aligning HSBPs. It does have a whole suite of resources on some of the best practices around the collaboration that should be happening between special services and counseling staff as we do this work together in partnership to support these students in their goals. And then there is a kind of a 9 through 10, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 kind of side-by-side look at what's typically the supports for an IEP transition plan relative to what it might look like with a high school and beyond plan. So if you like checklists, if you're that kind of a person who likes lists with check boxes and that appeals to you, those lists are really nice side-by-side guides. And one of the things that I really found profound when I looked at them for the first time after they were developed is just how much there should be cross-pollination happening there, because some of the things that our IEP students transition plans do for them in terms of prepping them for the world are things we could be and maybe should be considering doing and providing for all students as supports. And it was a little bit eye-opening for me. So encourage you to take a look at those. And I just wanted to give you a little more depth around what the suite of resources are there for the collaboration in this work. And then we want to take a pause here for you all to take a quick stretch break. If you need it, get up, do some jumping jacks, do something to get the blood flowing again. And if you have questions, we would encourage you to type those in the chat, and Alex can answer those as we see them. Not quite sure what unmute would look like with this many people. So best practices to working with the high school Beyond Plan coordinators and reporting, ? So Kate Atbars is asking that question. Can you expand on that just a little bit, Kate? I'm going to invite you to unmute really quickly and just give us a little context about what you're asking. Or type it if you don't have the unmute button. Again, just kind of taking a guess at what Kate is getting at. This is really a collaborative process in nature to ensure that we are helping our students align those two opportunities for self-reflection and planning and exploration to help them meet those goals. And so counseling staff and social services staff in partnership is just a super fun thought for me. All right, we'll see if she puts anything else in the chat, Alex. Anyone else have any questions? Since it's pretty quiet, if you want to try unmuting, we can try. See how it goes. I'll give you a second. Thanks, Kate, for the confirmation. Okay. So John Page, he's a CT director in Tacoma, I believe, if I'm remembering right, would like to know, Alexander, more about the IEP transition plan itself. Is it a transition by grade level or transition out of high school? And what is in the IEP transition plan, deadline, et cetera? So if you could maybe just share a little bit about what that process is for us non-special services folks, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna get that page number for you in the case study so you can see what it is, so what it looks like. So sorry, I'm scrolling through to find that. But it is a requirement for every student starting at age 16 to have an IEP transition plan. And it's for their transition out of high school, which could be at age 18, it could be at age 21. And so it's really going to outline their strengths, preferences, interests, and also like needs. And then it's going to have goals. Like if you remember, can we scroll back to that first IEP slide real quick?
Yes, give me.
It's going to have goals across potentially 3 different domains. So education, employment, and possibly also the bottom, which is the independent living. But I would encourage you to take a look at the case study example. I'm going to get that page number for you. So the transition plan starts at page 24, and it's just a really good example to kind of possibly get some awareness. A lot of this is going to be very similar to the high school and beyond plan. So for example, the transition plan has what we call SPIN, so strengths, preferences, interests, and also like needs. And that high school and beyond plan has the personal profile. So it's very important that they're coordinated. So I hope that's a little bit helpful. Would anyone else have anything to add there?
And just adding that, Ronnie, our Rockstar Tech Support, just check the box so you may be able to unmute now. Thank you, Carrie, for pointing that out. Like I said, you'd think we'd be totally perfect at running Zoom meetings by now, but we still get a little bit buggered up by the technicalities. So John, does that help? If you're able to unmute, let us know. And if not, type a yay or nay, please, sir. Okay, we'll just assume. Oh, John can't unmute yet. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful clarification. And again, some of the links that we put in the chat to these resources can give you some more information as well. I know y'all are really busy, but this is why this is really meant to be a collaborative process, because the expertise we bring through our various roles is what will help this become smooth, and for us to have the right people together to know what are the places we need to make those connections so that we're in alignment. Okay. And as far as Ed's question, Alexandra, he's asking about replacing an English class credit with a transition class, just like we showed with the world language. I want to just clarify, can you clarify that question?
Yes. So what I would say there is within the template, there's some prompts for the personal pathway, like how to substitute it. And you can do that for either the art classes or for the world language classes. And I'm going to drop in some information from State Board of Ed that's really helpful, I think, to clarify how to do this. So I'm going to drop that in, but all of these are going to be student specific kind of choices based on a student's goal.
Okay. And would encourage you all to reach out to Alexandra via her email if you have specific questions that aren't being answered by the time we get through with today's conversation. So she's got her contact information there, so you know who to reach out to. All right, so with that, we're gonna go ahead and hope you guys all had a chance to stand up and move around and wiggle a little bit. So we're gonna hit the second half of our event today with our superstar rockstar guests from University Place School District, who are gonna share a little bit about their journey down this road together so far. So I'm gonna hand this over to oh, Kelly needs to be unmuted. What? Sorry, Kelly, I don't know why. Ronnie, can you unmute her? I don't know why everybody's muted.
I think I got
Sorry,
it.
y'all.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
You bet.
Good afternoon. I'm Kelly McClure, Executive Director of Special Services for the University Place School District, and I'm here with a fabulous team, Monique Patel, our Community Transition Program Teacher, and Kelsey Park, our CTE Director and Assistant Principal from Curtis High School. We want to thank Kim and OSPI for inviting us to share with all of you the ongoing collaborative work in our district around the alignment of the High School Beyond Plan and transition planning process. I will begin this presentation by briefly sharing with you the why behind this work and the data that we use to determine where to best get started. Also, as a former high school resource room and life skills teacher, I've always placed transition planning and improving students' post-school outcomes at the center of the work. So I'm excited to share with, I'm excited that our team is here today to share with you. Go ahead. Great. In 2019, nationwide, only 19% of adults with disabilities were employed. That is heartbreaking to me, that is such a low percentage. So at the state and local levels, we must not only share a common vision, but continue to make it a priority to improve the post-school outcomes for students with disabilities in order to improve their overall quality of life. Go ahead. As Kim stated earlier, this takes collaboration. So once House Bill 1599 was adopted, I considered it the opportune time for me to meet with our various stakeholders, our Executive Director of Secondary, the CTE director, and our high school admin team. And I shared with them this information, and we started to sift through our post-school data, as well as start talking about our current transition practices in alignment with the high school and beyond plan. I wanted to ensure the district was committed to our common vision and that we were ready to develop a system in order to provide students with disabilities, specifically those students with most significant disabilities, the same access to transition planning as their general education peers. So immediately, our wonderful high school administrative team couldn't have done this without them. They embraced the notion, pulled high school counselors together, our special ed teachers in the same room. We reviewed the House Bill 1599. They also engaged the team in some very difficult conversations regarding each other's roles and responsibilities in this process, as well as emphasized the why behind this work. Yeah, you're good, stay here. They emphasize that general ed and special ed staff can, if you could go back to the previous slide.
Sorry,
They
Kelly.
emphasized that the general ed staff and special educators can no longer work in silos because research has proven that this is not what's best for kids, nor does it lead to positive student outcomes. Students with disabilities, we all know, need more intensive supports, and it takes everybody working together to bridge the gap, to afford them the same opportunities to access those classes, those programs, and post-school activities in order to be successful. As a group, the counselors and teachers agreed that in order to best serve our students, this required them to improve their communications, their collaborations, and their coordination of activities for students. Now, getting everybody on the same page doesn't happen overnight because it still takes time to listen, to learn and understand people's beliefs, their visions, their perceptions, and their overall experiences working specifically with students with disabilities. Okay. Besides just accepting, though, the compliance requirements of the House bill, this was an opportunity to share and talk about research-based practices, analyze our student data so we could identify specific gaps in our system before developing a greater plan.
Oops.
Several of you might have seen this slide in the past or this graphic. I think I stole it from CCTS, Chris Hirschman, who's on this webinar, but we all know what research, years of research tells us. When we have quality IEPs and transition planning in place, this increases students' level of engagement, which then significantly increases the likelihood that students will remain in school and graduate with a diploma. Research also tells us that students who exit our school systems with a high school diploma are more likely to reach their post-school goals, as well as earn a higher wage. Again, another way to improve their quality of life. So what we did, and then after reviewing the research, we looked at our own data. Data is powerful. It should drive the decisions that we make. So we looked first at our post-school data. We looked at the overall data as well as our specific subgroup data. We were part of the Puget Sound ESD Needs Assessment project, or the ESSA project for the Puget Sound ESD. We conducted a needs assessment and identified our strengths and weaknesses in our program. The results of that assessment concluded that there was a lack of vertical alignment between the junior high and high school in regards to students on IEPs accessing the high school and beyond plan. And then finally, we pulled the high school and beyond planning data for specific subgroups of students and determined that our students with the most significant disabilities, these are students typically in our self-contained programs, were less likely to participate in this process. Here is a glimpse of our post-school data We, since 2014, there's been a gradual decline in the number of students engaged in post-secondary activities 1 year after leaving high school. This data didn't set well with me, nor did it sit well with the high school administration and our case managers after we examined it a little bit more closely. This data, after looking at the results of our needs assessment that I referred to earlier, this prompted us to take a closer look at the vertical alignment between the junior high and the high school, specifically relating to our special programs classrooms. We determined, if not most of our students had not engaged in the high school and beyond process, planning process, and case managers were writing components of transition plans in complete isolation. They were more focused on compliance instead of collaborating with others to develop meaningful plans. Students in grades 8 and 9, approximately only half of those students had completed 25% of the high school and beyond planned activities required for their individual grade levels. Then as we moved up to grades 10 through 12, only 13 out of 22 of the plans had not even been started yet. This was a huge concern for us. And then when we added 5 additional students to that, 18 out of the 22 students had less than 40% of the activities completed for their specific grade level. Only in our community transition program, which is our 18 to 21-year-old program, did the students complete 100% of the required activities for that grade level. So through this data dive, we discovered that our special education students were accessing the high school and beyond plan, that's a hard thing to say, planned platform at significantly lower rates than their gen ed peers, just due to the system structure. Since the majority of our special programs typically don't have the skills to access core classes, gen ed core classes, they weren't being provided the same opportunities to participate. There were a lot of assumptions that our case managers were developing high school and beyond plans through the transition process, when in reality, our teachers had received little guidance. They did not have a scope and sequence to follow, and they lacked the tools and resources to enable their students to fully participate. So in August 2020, I approached Monique Patel. Go ahead and go back to the previous slide. I approached Monique Patel, who is our PLC leader for special programs, and shared with her the high school and beyond planning data, and asked her to consider working with her PLC team to create a SMART goal that specifically targeted developing a more systematic approach to increasing student participation. Again, specifically for our students with most significant disabilities. The hope here was that their efforts would also influence the work of case managers in our resource room and at our junior high, so we could continue the momentum for many years to come. So without reservation, the team embraced this idea. And now I'm going to invite Monique to share with you some of the hard work that's already taken place and where the team still has room for growth in this area of aligning our high school beyond plan and transition planning process. I don't know if Monique's muted as well.
Ronnie, did you see that Monique and Kelsey both need to be unmuted as well? And Karma, just while we're getting our presenters unmuted, just for everyone, the slide deck is going to be available once we have captioned and edited and fixed up our video. That will also be sent out, so you guys will have access to everything that we are presenting today, including the list of links of everything that we're putting in the chat in case you missed anything. So we'll have it all for you, I promise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Monique, are you there? Oh, there she is. All right.
Yeah. And thank you, Kelly. My name is Monique Patel. I'm the Community Transition Program Teacher and Special Programs PLC Leader at Curtis Senior High School. And in this section, I will share how our team is working to align a special program students' high school and beyond plan and IEP transition plan. Next slide. Oh, there we are. So a little bit about who we are. Our high school houses grades 10 to 12, as well as the community transition program serving 18 to 21-year-olds. So we have a unique opportunity to align our work across the high school through a student's exit at age 21. Our PLC collaborates with stakeholders at various levels, so not just our teachers, but also our school psychologists, related service providers, other teachers. But a unique feature is that our administrators are very involved in our work. We're advised by a career and technical education administrator, district special services director, and our building special education administrator. Next slide. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what we chose to do and why, and then the work we've done so far this year. So our PLC goal this year is to align the high school and beyond plan and IEP transition plan requirements across programs and operationalize these expectations for our work with special program students. This means we're building an aligned scope and sequence how we're going to implement components and transition services with our students, and particularly what happens each year to progress students forward. This will be a system and a reference for staff and IEP teams that they can differentiate for the unique needs of each student we serve. We were motivated by the lever data that Kelly shared earlier, and it was shared with us at the end of last year, and a desire to figure out how to create more impactful transition journeys and outcomes for our students. We also needed to capture and evaluate what was happening in various classrooms and silos, as we mentioned, and start to intentionally improve and align those systems. As you saw from Kelly's presentation, a lot of the high school and beyond plan was completed once students reached me in the transition program. So we needed to change that and begin earlier. We know that evidence and experience shows us that starting early is best for our students and planning for post-secondary outcomes, especially when we're supporting students with complex support needs. We need to use that time effectively. So we were eager to collaborate and build our collective capacity, start earlier, using time with students and families intentionally. So I'm going to share what we've done so far. For our first semester, to get us started in this work, we took the time to get to know the critical resources available to us to build our knowledge and capacity. So we read and processed the OSPI guidelines that were referenced earlier in this webinar. We explored our district's chosen high school and beyond plan platform with our students in mind. We reviewed our district scope and sequence for implementing the high school and beyond plan with the general education student population. We also looked at what effective practices were in our current classrooms. I'm going to speak to the high school and beyond plan platform for just a moment. We spent time looking at this through the lens of how it could be accessible for our students with complex support needs. What are its features? For example, our platform is Zello. It's leveled by grade. All the students at the high school have access, including ours, have access to the high school version of Zello. But we learned that the platform also has grade level bands for 3, 5, and K2, and that some of those lower grade level bands still collected critical information to inform students' strengths, preferences, interests, needs, had career matchmaker, goal setting features, but had accessibility features such as pictures and limited text and different things that, that by understanding these features within the tools available to us, we could place some of our students at a more accessible level to the platform, provide them access to the high school and beyond plan, and collect information for planning their transition journey. Our work is still to get as many students as possible accessing the high school level content, though in a few cases, we've learned introducing students who are in earlier grade levels, such as 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, to the lower grade level bands of our platform, high school and beyond plan platform, gives them an entry point and an introduction to the high school and beyond plan. And then we've mapped how they're going to progress to higher complexity over time. and access those components. As much as possible, we wanted to stop treating the implementation of these plans as silos, the high school and beyond plan done over here, the IEP transition planning done over here, because there is so much alignment. We wanted to avoid duplicating efforts and be more intentional with our work and the time we have with our students. So this research and time spent understanding our resources built our collective knowledge and capacity as teachers and as a team to help us determine how to move forward in aligning those plans. Next slide. So that's where we've been. Here is where we're going this next part of the year. We are right now working on building the system for our instruction, creating that alignment. We are writing and building out a scope and sequence for special program students. In it, we're including multiple entry points for students aligned to both the high school and beyond plan and the IEP transition plan. And when needed, bringing in curriculum and materials that are accessible to each of our students to fulfill these components and allow each student, no matter how they communicate, to provide meaningful input at all stages of their transition journey. Our goal is to provide a system for implementing this that's not people or program dependent, but rather creates a reference and system all of us can follow that's just built into the way we do things through the high school and community transition program. In this process, as was discussed earlier, we are also looking at collaboration. We have the guidance provided from OSPI that informs this. We are asking questions given our context. What is best covered by case managers, counselors, gen ed teachers, families, agencies that we partner with? We're looking at how we can best leverage the many partners who support our students and families in their transition journey to achieve the outcomes for our students. In addition to the work of alignment and collaboration, which are very important, there are a lot of other important things we're layering in as we are doing this work this year. One is cultural responsiveness. So how we can improve in this area, serving a diverse student population. Recently, we had a training with Dr. Achola through our ESD. Look him up, he's amazing. We're taking that learning and figuring out how it layers in at all levels of this process with our students and families. We're looking at how we can support more special program students in accessing the high school level band of our high school and beyond plan platform and how to make that content accessible, what instructional practices and materials we need to do to provide that access, and then sharing our learning back to other teams and departments. We're focusing on our own locus of control to start, but also know that what we are doing as a PLC can ripple out to multiple stakeholders and buildings in our district. Here are some practices that have helped us in this process. We have a PLC model. We meet regularly. We're regularly submitting our work and getting feedback. As I mentioned, our administrators are involved. They all provide a lens that helps us move forward with all of those viewpoints in mind. We are looking at a big picture system right now and how to improve that in our practice. But I do want to note that this has already changed our practice even this year, with teachers engaging, learning, and developing their comfort with understanding the high school and beyond plan, and all the other work that we've been doing, trying out ways to differentiate and adapt. More of our students at earlier grades are participating, including 8th and 9th grade right now, which is great. So it's already having an immediate impact. We share electronic resources. And then one thing our teacher said is just having time. We're taking time this year to map out this alignment so it becomes part of our system and the time that is required to do this well. Next slide. I'm just going to share a couple things from our PLC. We have a Google Classroom. This is where you put our agendas, our resources. People can look at it. We can invite other teachers to access these resources as well. In each of our agendas, we keep a quick reference of the OSPI information that's been provided in this webinar, our district's core documents on this work, our work products that we've done, so we can always be checking back and making sure our work is aligned. I also have a snapshot of an activity where we reviewed the high school and beyond plan platform for the general education scope and sequence and identified its alignment with IEP Transition Plan. I want to mention briefly before turning it over to Kelsey that as a part of this process, we did look at our assets and what we could build from as we operationalize the IEP transition and high school and beyond plan alignment. We have strong compliant IEPs. They get reviewed, we get feedback. We've been trained by Chris Hirschman's team. So we have stuff that we're building from. We also had practices that were going on that we wanted to incorporate in. So we identified what those pieces were for us. So for instance, at our high school, our teachers have been doing career exploratory activities and campus jobs with students. They have been connecting students with disability services early on. A lot of practices from the transition program provided a starting place for our work because they captured parts of the high school and beyond plan requirements, as well as the IEP transition plan. And here's some of them. So again, just a couple artifacts. This is a portfolio checklist we've used and adjusted in the transition program, trying to capture high school and beyond plan, IEP, and other elements of students' transition for their portfolio. Now these pieces, parts of this are starting earlier. And then next slide. And this is sample slides from a student's student-led IEP, which can become an exit presentation for them once they leave. So we're doing this work on our end to improve outcomes for our students, their ability to participate meaningfully, access the general education content of the high school and beyond plan as much as possible, and help them leave us ready for their futures. I'm excited to introduce our CTE director and assistant principal, Kelsey Park, who regularly advises our PLC's work. And she's going to share about how our work fits into the broader context at Curtis High School.
Thank you so much, Monique. I really appreciate everybody's letting me be here. I know that we've been talking a lot about special education, and I know that we also have counselors and some gen ed teachers and other CTE directors who are here with us today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my role and what I've done to kind of help guide where we are going with this. Like it's been said previously, this is a journey that we're all on and we're working through this together. So your support and as a team collaboratively, that's going to be the goal. My biggest takeaway from all of this is thinking about how to collaborate, and hopefully you'll be able to walk away from this with some action steps for yourself. So like we talked about, this has been a transition. Prior to House Bill 1599, we were very much in compliance. We had over 90% of our gen ed students who would be completing their high school and beyond requirements. We would pull them out of class. They would come down to our career center. They would sit and do the activities, and we would check the box to say that they were done. And for us, that started to become it started to become just the compliance checkbox, right? We weren't actually getting the student voice in there, and it wasn't anything of value to our kids as they were leaving. And a lot of student input that we were getting from our CTE surveys were that they still didn't know what they wanted to do. And so when House Bill 1599 rolled out, and we also had to start looking at how our special population students were represented in this and how they were engaging in the same activities that our gen ed students were. We then at the time had a shift from career cruising to Zello, and OSPI has provided a lot of free resources. There are many other high school and beyond platforms out there that are available for use, but we are using Zello in the UP school district. So we started this shift to this tool, and then all of a sudden we hit a pandemic. And that I say with excitement because I'm trying to find the silver lining in all of this, but that pandemic really offered us the opportunity, like Monique talked about, of time to be able to reimagine what our program is and say, how do we really get that student voice to let that drive that compliance? We had to shift our thinking to making sure that our special programs students were getting that access to that employment. Our numbers needed to go up based on the data that was shared previously by Kelly. And how do we do that? And so my role has come into play working along with, my role has come into play working alongside our special programs PLC. The work that they're doing of really dissecting what is done in a high school beyond plan and how that informs the IEP has been what has become the ripple effect for us. Go ahead and next slide. So as I said, we use the Zello resources and the platform to help inform our high school and beyond plan. And I saw in the chat some questions about duplicating effort and can those be embedded? And that is one of the major reasons why we are re-looking at how this system is structured, because teachers' time and counselors' time and case managers and directors and assistant principals and all of our administrators, all of our time is so valuable that we had to find a way to reduce the load, to share that load, and to really make sure that we were A, meeting everything because of compliance, but A, meeting everything because that student voice needed to be represented. So we chose Zello because we needed a place that was going to be able to collect data and give us information. Monique talked about how we have dug through our platform and said, okay, where are the key parts that are built into the platform that inform the IEP so that our case managers can just use the student input to write the IEP. So they're starting to go hand in hand backwards from how we used to do, which was to pull the students down and to do career interest surveys and to use Tfolio, which is excellent. But instead of doing it separate and in a silo, as Monique shared, we had to start thinking about how we can overlap that work. For us, Zello is super easy to use for the students, which was the biggest part. It's very personalizable for the kids, so it reflects what they're interested in. For teachers and for parents coming up soon, the accessibility was also something that really drove our work in figuring out what we wanted to use to help guide this work. And Monique shared that we have special program students who are accessing K2 or 3-5 leveled lessons that provide the same information that our gen ed students would. So that way we're accessing something that's adaptable to what their needs are. And we needed something that was transferable. We needed something to be able to easily send with a student or to be able to pass on and that students could transfer with. I saw in the chat some student-led IEP transition, those meetings. We needed it to be something that could also be tangible and usable for those students. And so Zello was the platform and the why help behind our high school and beyond planning with our students and staff. I talked a little bit about this. This really started to create this ripple effect. So we started to work with the data that told us that we had students who were leaving us unemployed. And that, again, it just didn't sit right with us. Our numbers, we can do better, right? So we had to use the data that we had. And then we had this pandemic effect, which gave us time and flexibility and the option to be able to know that we were in compliance, but we weren't doing necessarily what was best for our students. So in those regular meetings that we have with our special programs, that small group, they are leading that work without them really knowing, because I'm trying to be, as an administrator and the CTE director, as actively involved in their processes to implement that out to the junior high, so that at the 8th grade level, students can start accessing and implementing, and that those teachers can start accessing and implementing, then out to all of our LRC and case managers, and then out to general education. So that not only were our special population students really using this tool to determine where and what they wanted to do, but that our gen ed students can get a similar effect and impact for their futures. And so this really brings me back to, and I hope for everybody here, the why behind the what for this. For CHS, Our mission is to ensure that all students learn at high levels and in a safe and caring environment. But I think more importantly for this work, our vision is our paramount duty to enable viable economic decisions and futures for all of our students. And I put the picture of a resume up there because that person that's represented on that resume is exactly that. They are a person that's coming out into our community and part of our society. And that resume represents the skills and interests that they are taking with them. So it's part of our duty that the high school and beyond plan is not just the checkbox, but it's them being able to walk out and say, here's why and what I want to do as a student and as a post-secondary person in my society to make that that connection to their community, to get them that success and that employability and some sort of post-secondary engagement. So recommendations from our work, and like we've talked about, this is ongoing for us, and we are always open to brainstorming and flexibility and all of that. When you are working collaboratively, I first want to challenge you to think vertically. Don't just think about your building, you have to think outside of your building and all of the layers that go inside of that to be able to really inform your scope and sequence. And Monique talked about the actual, it's almost like curriculum mapping for us, the scope and sequencing that we're doing at all levels so that there's a systemic work that's happening for you and your building and your district. No, it takes a village. It is not just on our case managers to get this work, and it is not just on our 3 counselors for 1,400 students to help get this work. It is everybody that works in this together with the students and parents. And so as you start to dissect out whose responsibility it is, remember that it's going to take collaboration in that responsibility and that working together to make this actually an implementable and usable product and outcome for your students. Please keep in mind, students should always be first. I know I speak passionately about that because I truly do believe that that's why we're all in education. And so if we shift our thinking to away from high school and beyond graduation requirement to what do our students want to do after high school, it helps reframe how students and staff are interacting with their high school and beyond plans. The graduation pathways that came out for CTE have also been a huge drive for us to really reimagine and relook at our course offerings. We've started to look at making sure every single high school class that a student is taking in CTE offers some sort of industry certification or dual credit certification so that students can build pathways to what they want to do in their post-secondary. We are a small district, so we have to get creative about what that looks like. So keep those pathways in mind as you are looking at what your program offerings are to shape where your students are going to go. So it all has to connect together. And then the last 2, I think for me, kind of go hand in hand. Be brave. This is hard and challenging work. And again, we're not experts in this, but we have had successes in this. So be brave to start the process of thinking about this differently and start small as you do this. Monique talked about she's really focusing on her scope and her lens realm of control. So consider what your realm of control is as one of those people in your village and how you can start shaping this to look differently for your students. So.
Okay, thank you, Team University Place. Thank you for everyone who has stayed on for an over-hour-long meeting. I know it's hard in Zoom land these days to keep focused that long, but y'all been great. We would like to take this moment to try to address any remaining questions. I know Alexandra's been working furiously on answering your questions in the Q&A. I do see one that I'll just put out to the panelists that says, what if the student hasn't made a decision about what they want to do? Which, oh my gosh, imagine that, a kiddo doesn't know what they want to do. Very common question. Thank you, Stephanie, for voicing that. I saw some comments in the chat too about how are we expecting kids to know what they want to do. Obviously, it's an age-old question, but I would love for any of the panelists to speak up about how that works in this setting if you would like to.
I can speak to Gen Ed, and in some of our LRC, I know Monique could speak more to special programs, but for our students in UP, a lot of helping them figure out what they might do is really looking at those other parts of this, of what are their skills, what are they interested in, capitalizing on those conversations to help guide the classes that they're taking, and then using that to help guide what do they want to do. Because that is a huge question that, you know, I don't know 100% if I even know the answer to that, right? So really having those individual conversations is really what it has to become. It has to get individualized to those students and knowing who they are.
Yeah, I will just add on to that. I think that's part of the work of starting early for us is, you know, with our students having the opportunity to start these conversations and these exploratory activities in 7th, 8th as our guidance for the high school and beyond plan states, which is earlier than the IEP transition plan, is really critical. It gives time for that exploration. So for us, it's like the earlier the better. And the fact that this year that junior high is starting to have these conversations means that by the time they are hitting high school where they're enrolling for classes and, you know, coming maybe to transition and getting ready for making choices about going out in the world, that a lot of that groundwork has been done by then. So I really think, yeah, starting early. I don't know, Kim, if you're going to shout out other questions. I saw a couple I wanted to speak to.
Yeah, please feel free. We've got a couple minutes. So if you saw some that you think need to be answered, please go for it.
Yeah, I saw someone mention, how do student-led IEPs and self-advocacy fit into this? I'm sorry if I missed other questions. I showed a couple slides. I think it's like a teacher who does student-led IEPs and self-advocacy instruction, like how awesome will it be if students are starting that student-led IEP process in like 8th or 9th, again, starting early, 8th or 9th grade, building their draft, and then each year we revisit it based on their information, like based on their goals, and look at that. And is this still relevant? Has this adjusted? And then they get that practice year to year moving forward. So I think that instruction is a big part of what we do as special educators. And Kim Reichdahl said something earlier about like, that's a practice we can also share back to general education as well. I'll stop there. I wasn't sure if someone else.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for highlighting that. I saw that one as well and appreciate the additional clarification. I wanted to ask something that John had put in the chat here right at the end, just around the delivery model, sort of the scope and sequence. So are some of these things happening in specific classes? Is it certain things at certain grade level, whole class versus individualized? Just sort of maybe a little bit of information, if you've got that, around the how of the delivery and the scope and sequence a little bit.
Yeah, so for our general ed and our for all of our students, they're all doing it now, which is part of that greatness of the high school and beyond House Bill 1599. So all of our students right now, especially because we're in a pandemic, are getting a real spattering of different ways that they're getting into it right now. Because we have the flexibility of what we're given with time and how to access and reach students right now, it's kind of ebbing and flowing in how we're doing it. And so real life practice, right? So yesterday we set up we had a whole day where we didn't have any classes, everything was asynchronous, but we had synchronous meetings for all of our students. And I planned out for 60-person Google Meets that went over and actually used Pear Deck to engage students in the process of going through their high school and beyond plan. And out of 1,300 students, we had over 1,100 individual accesses into our platform and engagement in completing at least one lesson through their high school and beyond plan, which for us yesterday was our matchmaker. And so that for us is giving us this opportunity to say, oh, well, we don't really need them to come in person and sit in front of us and take time out of this anymore. Okay, we can do this synchronously. And then we've also taken parts of this, like our resume. Every CTE class here at Curtis High School has to incorporate in a resume and building that and revising it. We also have every student go through an interview process through one of our, we have a mock interview day that all of our CTE classes will do. So we know that in 3 years, all of our students will have completed that requirement, and it's giving them practice and it's helping them get those job skills. We also are looking at building in parts of our lessons into health class because we know everybody has to take health. We actually had English 12 do some of it, and our current issues class for 12th graders next semester will be doing some of it. So we are getting creative in thinking about that, sharing the load and that village outside of just our administrators and counselors and case managers, so that it gives access to all of our students and everybody that's in there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Probably got time for maybe one last question. I just wanted to note in the chat that for those of you still on the call, anyone who was signed up today will be receiving the slide deck as well as the link, the page of links as resources in our follow-up email to you. So that should be coming shortly. And then we will be posting the recording of this and sending it out via various channels of communication. So you'll be able to go back and share this with other colleagues who couldn't make it today, and go back and take a look again if you would like yourself. Want to just take a minute to thank all of our presenters from University Place. I hope you realize in listening to them that they are being really open and transparent about their journey, and that we are all in this together, and they're a great resource, but be kind in asking for support as we are all super busy, but they're here because they're willing to help and share, whatever experience they can with you to help maybe smooth out some of the bumps in the road as we all develop our own ways of doing this process together. So thank you all of you too for being here. I know things are busy, so look for those follow-ups and those posted videos, and we really appreciate everything that you all are doing to support students and hopefully yourselves and your families in this very hard time. If any other panelists would like to speak up with a final thought, please do so. Otherwise, we're gonna let all these wonderful folks go on to whatever else they have coming up in their day.
I think I'd just like to say, like you said, feel free to reach out. I think we're all in this learning together, so the more we can bounce ideas and think collaboratively outside of just our own district is also a benefit for everyone. So.
Okay, and I also just put something from Chris Hirschman at the Center for the Transition Studies in the chat, their transition network that might be a resource for staff. Hopefully that's a helpful link as well. And Sarah, you're getting some props and appreciation for your sharing about our special day today and the National Holocaust Remembrance. And then as far as clock hours go, Elise, thanks for that reminder. Ronnie Larson is our clock hour and webinar guru. She'll be following up with you all to ensure that your attendance is noted and you get access to those clock hours. So be on the lookout for that email from us. Anything else, Ronnie, you want to add about clock hours while we still have a fair number of folks on the line?
Sure, I'll just add that it'll just take me a few days because there was a lot of people, but once I verify all their attendance, they'll get a survey email from PD Enroller, and once they complete that, then their hours are released to their transcript and they can print a copy from their PD Enroller account if they need one.
All right, great. And remember, we're saving the chat. So before you go, if you have any last minute thoughts on topic for our last OSPI WSAC webinar on March 31st, you can put it in the chat or send it to myself or Sarah. You'll have our contact info, and we're just really trying to nail that down and be responsive to the field as much as we can with what your needs are. So don't be shy, don't hesitate to ask. We're still in the process of building that out. So would love to hear from you. And thank you for all of you for being here.
Thank you.
So, all right.